So let's talk about journal articles. They are the lifeblood of the scientific enterprise. They're how we pass on knowledge. They're the coin of the realm for faculty who often use their publication records for hiring, advancement, promotion. But more than just being a staple of the academic career, they're crucial because they're the primary way that we pass on the knowledge that we've discovered through our different scientific endeavors from one generation to the next, from one team of scholars to another. So we get to literally stand on the shoulders of giants and don't have to recreate the wheel all the time. They're indexed in ways that people can find, ideally permanently. That's what a digital object identifier is meant to be. And they are the most trustworthy form of research publications that we have. And that's for one main reason: they undergo blind peer review. Blind meaning the author's identity is removed from the journal article before it's sent out to be reviewed. There's a lead editor who knows who wrote it. They identify two or three other experts or scholars in that area that the paper is about. They remove the title page that has the author's names and affiliations. Then they send it to these reviewers in a way that those reviewers don't know who wrote it. And this is to make it more meritocratic, less bias if people have affiliations or friendships, or even negative biases against certain scholars or ideas. And so then it undergoes this peer review. Those reviewers really tear it apart, mark up all the things they think should be strengthened or changed, or maybe aren't up to the rigorous standards that that journal would have for its publications. Then they give a recommendation back to the lead editor, whether to accept unconditional acceptance, which is very rare, especially on a first submission. Usually, if it's accepted, it'll be one of a couple versions of what we call a revise and resubmit. There could be a revise and resubmit or an R&R with minor revisions, so some small changes that are needed, with major revisions, some very substantial changes needed, or it might get a reject, so not suitable for publication. Now, it is possible that you submit an article to a journal and it doesn't even go out for blind peer review if the lead editor feels like there's some fatal flaw in the paper or it's outside the scope of the journal. Then they'll reject it before they send it out to blind review. That's called a desk reject, and that usually happens pretty quickly. So there's quite a rigorous process. You'll either get a desk reject or it'll get sent out for review, and then you most likely will not get an unconditional acceptance. You'll either get a revise and resubmit with minor revisions, major revisions, or you might get a rejection. If you do get a revise and resubmit, you make all the changes, you write a letter to the reviewers highlighting how you've strengthened each item they pointed out, and you send it back in, it still might get rejected or be sent back to you with another round of revisions. So this is how we make science stronger. It's a kind of developmental process that the authors get feedback and get to improve their papers as they submit it to a journal. And if it's rejected, then they send it to another journal and the whole process starts over. So it can be time consuming. One of the criticisms of the blind peer review process is that it's not very fast, but it is the best process we have to date for strengthening the science that we publish and making it fair. So real quick, what's the basic structure of a journal article? There are some common sections. Usually there's an abstract, which is a 200 or 300 word summary of the paper, what it's about. Maybe it's key theory, data, findings, and implications. Then we move into some pretty standard sections. There's usually always an introduction and lit review. The introduction introduces the topic, why it's important. The lit review builds on and interacts with the existing literature, identifies a gap in the literature that this paper is going to try to solve with the study that was done. After the intro and lit review, we move into the methods section. This is describing how the study was conducted. It usually has some subsections like about sampling or the participants involved, how data was collected, how it was analyzed. It could be certain instruments or materials and procedures that were used. Think back to your science fair project days as a grade school student, and you had the poster board with different sections, the hypotheses, and the methods section. The methods section is crucial because the idea is that any study should be able to be replicated. And so that method section, it's almost like the recipe, right? What are the ingredients, the steps, the materials, so that somebody else could do the same study and test to see whether they get similar results. That leads us to the results section. This is where you present key findings. If it's quantitative, this is often with tables and graphs. Even some qualitative papers will have that, but maybe it's the statistical analysis. If it's a qualitative paper, it could be your thematic analysis after you've coded for themes. That was some key quotes from interviewees. But you're really presenting in a kind of objective way simply what you found when you did the study. Then you move into the discussion section. This is where you get to interpret the results, sort of explore the implications, maybe suggest why with your educated guess, now that you've kind of gone through all the steps and explored this, as to why you think the outcomes were such as you found. You also suggest future research directions, or depending on the kind of journal, maybe even some policy implications that might lead out of the findings that you got. So the results are the objective reporting of what you found. The discussion is that interpretation of those results. You're kind of getting at why you found what you found. Then, of course, there's usually a references list where all the sources cited in the article are there in the references. For example, say you're researching social mobility. The literature review would summarize existing studies, and the results section would present new data collected. This is what's called an empirical paper. This is the most common kind of journal. There are other kinds, like a meta-analysis, where it's the data are other journal articles, sort of a study of studies. Or there are some that are purely review articles, basically make huge lit reviews that are just giving people direction on the state of the field in a certain topical area. So while some of these other formats do exist, the most common type of journal article is the empirical paper that has these sections that I just outlined. So to recap, journal articles are essential for credible academic research. Understanding their structure helps in quickly locating key information. Peer review helps ensure quality, especially blind peer review. Engaging with journal articles enhances your academic and professional knowledge. It's not just professional scholars that cite and use journal articles. People in many fields will find key insights that they can then apply to their profession.